Welcome everyone to this episode of Manufacturing Talk Radio. I'm Tim Grady and I'm here with Lou Weiss, who's the president of All Metals and Forge Group. He's also the founder of Manufacturing Talk Radio. All Metals and Forge Group is our sponsor. Unless you would like to become the sponsor, please give us a call. Joining us today is Dereck Williams from Gamma Group. It's gammagroup.org. They are technical consultants in the world of quality management systems. Dereck, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
So let's talk about the general potpourri of quality management systems. You are familiar with AS 9100, ISO. Give us an idea, and our listeners, what kind of consulting work you do.
So you touched right on it, right? We mostly support quality management systems. We do a little bit with lean and some other stuff, but the quality systems are our core. We like to focus on companies who are trying to be competitive in certified industries like aerospace, defense, medical device, etc. So the quality management systems that we support most frequently are ISO 9001, AS 9100, and ISO 13485. We also support the IATF 16949 for automotive occasionally, and then dabble in some of the other certifications like 17025 for calibration labs and things like that.
I know Lou has one he just wants to ask you about.
I know. What is the new one, AS 9104? I know that's part of something, but let's describe it a little bit for our audience.
So AS 9104 is the. Sure, you're not talking about AS 13100, the new one for.
No, this one's pretty new.
9104 has been around a little while. That's the.
Okay.
That's the standard for internal auditing, I believe. Right?
Correct.
For auditing quality management systems, not internal auditing. So that's the one that establishes your audit programs. It sets the structure for what an audit program should be through certification and so on. So how to select auditors, how to ensure objectivity when you're performing your audits, things like that, and then how to document and record those.
So it's basically an internal program in terms of QA management.
Yeah, and it's the standard that your CBs are going to audit against, or they're going to use that as their guidance when they're auditing your AS 9100 QMS, right? So it's really, that one's more used on the CB side of things, certification body side of things, but it's got a lot of value when you apply that to your internal audit program as well, right? So taking those fundamentals and bringing those internal will help you have a really robust program for managing those internal audits.
Okay, so let's move away from 9104. Let's talk about ISO 9000, which All Metals and Forge Group, my primary company that started in 1992, 3?
Something like that, Lou. We've been around a while.
Sure, yeah, we've been doing it a while, and we were one of the first in our sector to become registered. And actually, we have our new audit coming up in about 2 weeks after 28 years, and it's. For us, we have found it to be really quite incredible in terms of having saving ourselves from a lot of problems. And it took a long while for us to get our employees to buy into it. Why do we have to follow a foreign country, Switzerland? Meanwhile, it saved us a lot of time, effort, and so on. So why don't you take it from there, Dereck?
So yeah, the ISO 9001, that's kind of the foundation of quality management systems, so to speak. Most of the other systems are built in some way off of the 9001 standard. And really the key words in quality management system, are management system, right? I mean, it sets up your management system throughout your organization to, mitigate risks and take action on opportunities so that your company can be more successful. If your QMS isn't doing that, right, then then it's either not implemented right or it's not well understood. And then the quality aspect of it is, it's less focused on core quality, measuring parts and testing. It's more focused on that customer satisfaction piece, and that's what all that quality really equates to, is customer satisfaction, right? You can have a policy that says I'm going to measure every part, but if you don't have that whole quality or customer satisfaction part accounted for, a well-measured part is not going to make a happy customer if it's not on time, if it's dirty, if it's shipped in the wrong packaging, or the plethora of other things that can go wrong. So.
When we started this 28 years ago, like I said, there were virtually no one who was ISO or AS for that matter, because that only started in 1998, I think it was. So one of the things that we found that over these years is that if you're not ISO'd, you're not doing business with my company.
A lot of companies have that same mentality, and I think it comes down to the fact that supply chain impacts your customer as much as the stuff you do in your house, if not more in a lot of cases. And if your suppliers, if your suppliers aren't meeting certain standards, right, that reflects on you, reflects on your customer, it shows to your customer. So yeah, a lot of companies have adopted that philosophy of, you have to be certified at some level, right? It might be ISO, if for a company like yours, if it's, general manufacturing, certain industries. Other companies, mandate that you have to be AS 9100 if you want to fly parts in airplanes or in outer space. So,
right.
And the reason they do that is because they see the value in having systems in place that are being audited regularly, that have the customer focus, at their core, that are designed to continually improve.
So going forward, do you have any idea what percentage of companies are not certified today?
There's definitely, if you account for all the small, mom and pop shops and everything out there, I'd say more than half the companies out there manufacturing parts at some level are not certified at any level. But a substantial amount of companies are at least ISO certified, and more being required to get that way every day. Surprisingly, we actually just did some research on this specific to AS 9100. And less than 1.4% of all machine shops are AS 9100 certified. And in today's climate, where manufacturing resources are pulled so thin, right? There's not enough machinists, there's not enough people making parts. Narrowing that pool down to 1.4%, it really puts a strain on an industry.
That's really startling.
Yeah, 1.5%, less than 1.5% of companies out there capable of making airplane parts have the certifications necessary to do it.
Are the airlines, or not airline, but airplane part manufacturers, are they not requiring AS 9100?
They do require it, but what it does is, because they require it, they've now limited who they can select as manufacturers down to this very narrow pool. So, and we're approaching that for a different, for another venture that we're supporting, or that's why we did that investigation. But it was actually quite eye-opening, right? Because I work with a lot of these companies who are. So in my world, a lot of people are, but in the real world, a lot of them aren't. So,
that's startling. I had no idea. Did you, Tim?
No, I didn't realize that the numbers were so low. And I think another number, if you're familiar with it, Dereck, if you're going to find is exceptionally low, is a standard that the Department of Defense has been trying to implement for a decade. They're now claiming that this December 31st is the drop dead deadline for NIST 800-171.
Uh-huh.
If you mow the lawn at the DOD, you must be NIST certified. What's going on with NIST, Dereck?
You know, a lot of it's driven from the cybersecurity threats, right? You know, we just can't. Technology moves so fast, you know, in all sectors. It's hard to stay in front of that. And when you're talking about defense specifically, the urgency to stay in front of that and keep tight controls on that is an elevated one. So I understand why, you know, why there's a push to drive that way. I'm skeptical that it's going to be rolled out across all defense the way that they hope it will. I think it's going to cost people a lot of heartache or headache and heartburn to try and meet those standards in a short amount of time when a lot of companies just don't understand them. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. When it comes to NIST, CMMC, or any of the cybersecurity stuff, it's changed so much in such a short amount of time, and it's going to continue to change, that a company's going to have a very hard time staying ahead of that curve.
From my understanding, over the last 5 or more years, NIST has been reducing the level of the criteria because no one could keep up with it. So it was almost impossible. So to Tim's point, I understand that this is the year. But so was last year, and so was the year before, and the year before. And we ourselves are very seriously looking into this, but and we've done a lot of reading and research, and it's really a very difficult program to adhere to.
Well, that ever-moving target of NIST is a testament to the ever-changing climate of technology that we live in, right? I mean, 5 years ago, if you said you needed to have controls on artificial intelligence, nobody would have known what the heck that meant, right? Now you can say that in most groups, and people are like, okay, well, I maybe don't know how to put the controls in, but I understand that artificial intelligence is a thing, and that it needs to have some sort of controls, probably, right?
Well, I've kind of delved into lately about AI, and there's a book written by James Barrett, written in 2013. It's called The End of the Human Era, The Last Invention. And I read it usually before going to bed, and then I have all kinds of nightmares, because this is really a very traumatic process with regards to AI and uploading human intelligence into computers. And one of the things that I did read about was that they're worried about the fact that computers are going to take over the world. And they're self-improving, they're improving themselves, they can do all kinds of things. And one of the safeguards of AI is that once a computer can turn itself off, it doesn't know how to turn itself on. And that's one of the safeguards, because once a computer knows how to turn itself on, we may all be in trouble.
Mm-hmm. See, I always tell people, you know, when it comes to AI, we've already given it all of the information it's ever going to need to make a decision on how it's going to interact with humans, right? We've given it access to the internet and all of humans' knowledge. And, you know, if it's strategic at all, as it becomes aware, you know, one day, it's not going to tell us what its decision is if it's not favorable to us until it has the resources and capability of executing that decision. If it's favorable to us, it might tell us right away. But if it's not favorable to us, we won't know.
I think one of the problems that I uncovered was the fact that the coders who code AI, that, like in the movie 2001, we had a bad computer. His name was Hal. And Hal was programmed by people who weren't really nice. They had a lot of negative aspects. And they're talking about that now, that, let's say you have 1,000 programmers. Well, if you have 500 of them who are really nice people and programming some good stuff, but what about the other 500 who are nasty, who are cantankerous and so on, and they're programming all of these side issues with regards to their personality into a software, that we're in trouble.
Well, I mean, when we bring it back to NIST and cybersecurity, right? The most effective cybersecurity hacking, devices out there, if you will call them that, are AI driven, right? The ones that are going to guess your passwords the best and the most effectively and penetrate your firewalls, way more efficacy than some hacker sitting at his computer, is going to be an algorithm, something that cycles through hundreds of thousands of passwords over and over again. So we're seeing it today, right? The nefarious are using that technology the same way that the good, people with best intentions are.
Do you have any thought about AI effectively taking over the universe?
I mean, we definitely, if you plot technological advancements, right, on a timeline, yes, we're on that arc, right? We're reaching that point now. They say there's this point of singularity where the advancements, outpace the ability to, iterate or understand. Personally, I think that there's probably going to be some limit there, right? I mean, the math plots out today, from what we know, that it's headed on the trajectory, but there's got to be some, at least in my opinion, some hardware or some technological limit that we're going to stall out on before it just blows up. But AI is, we right now we're in the world of simple AI. When AI becomes, self-aware, when it becomes advanced AI and can make decisions, I mean, there's going to be a lot of good that comes out of it, I think. But there's potential for a lot of risk as well.
You pointed out a word that in my reading and research that I'm still having a problem understanding, and maybe you can define it for ourselves and for our audience, about singularity. Can you define singularity?
Yeah, I'm not the best expert on it, but my understanding of the singularity.
Is.
Yeah, my understanding of singularity is, if you're plotting our advancements on a timeline, it's the point where the advancements happen so rapidly that even the ability to understand or utilize the last iteration of it, by the time you can wrap your mind around it, or by the time it becomes a thing, the next one is already there and surpassing it, right? So we always joked about this with computers, right? Oh, by the time you get your computer out of the box and bring it home, it's going to be obsolete.
Right.
Well, we're starting to see that with hardware. We're starting to see that certainly with software. We're seeing that with medical device advancements and new space technology, and we're really starting to see that a rocket that was built 6 months ago, that was capable of bringing, 20 kilos to the moon. Just, by the time you launch, there's another rocket that's half the size that can bring twice as much. Battery technology, same thing, right?
Dereck, I want to jump in here for a moment and talk about quality management systems.
Oh, is that what we were talking about?
No, I'm into AI.
And the reason is, when Lou's company became ISO 9001 certified, the initial push to get that done was fairly significant. but a year or two after, when you're managing the quality system, it became a real asset to the company. It actually became an asset lose company virtually overnight, because they picked up a customer almost instantly who had to have a supplier that was
The
ISO
first day.
9000. And now it's become, I think, interpreted that this is difficult, if not impossible, expensive. I don't think those things are true anymore, are they, Dereck?
The three replies that I get from owners or entrepreneurs or people who have not implemented a QMS, who have some resistance to it, is it's too expensive, there's too much paperwork, and they're going to lose control of their company. Those are the three things that I hear them say outright. The expense, on paper, it looks like an investment, right? Like anything else. But
Right.
when you compare that investment to the return that you can get, that it's a pretty fast return. I mean, you said within a year you were already seeing benefits. Within a day you were seeing new customers. I hear those stories all the time, right? So the cost factor that one's an easy one to talk through. The numbers I have, that we did some analysis on was the companies that we spoke to on average with not being certified were making about 13.8% profit. These are machine shops, mold shops, a variety of manufacturing. When they went ISO certified, or a group of companies that we interviewed that were ISO certified, just ISO 9001, we're averaging 28.7% margin, right? I mean, that's double. That's more than double what their margins were just from that one certification. And as you move through it, right, AS 9100 jumps you up to 51.4 for an average. If you're 13100, meaning you're making aerospace engine parts, and you're certified to 13100, you're averaging 71. And ISO 1345, because it spans medical devices, and there's an insurance factor, I'm sure, and some other political factors that drive those numbers up. We've seen companies that are at 139% margin,
Whoa.
making medical devices. So without these certifications, you don't qualify to even bid the work. You don't get to even see the blueprint to say, yes, I can make it or not, right? So the money factor of it is an easy one to dispel. Too much paperwork is the next one. Oh, we've been running our shop this way for a long time. We're good at what we do. We have happy customers, and we don't want to bog us down with all that. Well, I always ask, well, what paperwork does what does ISO 9001 say you have to have, right? And usually I can't get an answer out of them. They don't know right away. A couple of things that come to mind is some sort of product verification, right? So whether it be a first article or your own process that you develop. Most companies that I meet that aren't ISO certified are already doing that to some degree. They're already taking measurements, they're writing down what they're finding to make sure that their parts are good, right? Ones with happy customers. The other one is contract review, retaining a record of your contract review. Now, companies, one of the biggest gains that you get from a quality management system is some requirements and some guidelines around how to review requirements before you commit to performing work, right? If you send me a part and I look at the print and I don't review all the requirements, I might tell you, sure, no problem, $20, here's that part. Then I read through the requirements and it's got to be gold plated and shipped to the moon and all this other stuff, and $20 ain't going to get me there anymore, right? Do I tell you now, hey, Lou, $20, let's renegotiate. Let's make that 20,000, right? Well, you already took the PO. Come on, man, right? You can't do that. So having that quality system in place helps do that. The mandatory paperwork that comes out of these QMSs is there's not a lot, right? There's actually only 7 mandatory documents if you are impacted by the entirety of ISO 9001. Most of these are already being captured in one way or another by companies. So formalizing it is, it's a very light lift to get there. Procedures is only 5 mandatory procedures, right? So, and those you only write once, right? That's not a bunch of paperwork. And then the last one is, loss of control of the company. Think, oh, we're going to have these procedures in place and we're not going to be able to make decisions. Well, the quality management system is there to help you reach your strategic objectives while satisfying customers, right? So company is still very much in your hands when you have a QMS. What it does to benefit that control is it helps you ensure that you, as the owner or as the the primary, don't have to be there at every process, at every step, making sure that it happens the way you want it. Right? It creates a structure of processes that are objective driven, customer focused, that says, hey, when something doesn't go right, we can go right to the process and pinpoint the failure mode, rather than assume that it's something or that these surface level fixes that we're constantly band-aiding. Right? We're going to drive it to root cause. We're going to do a true corrective action. We're going to improve the system. So the next time somebody else uses it, whether it be that same operator or the guy who came in to replace him, it's being used the way it's intended to, and it's meeting certain objectives and results. So I think those are all easy myths to dispel.
One of the things that I found, and again, we're now talking about 28 years of our history, from the day one when we started with ISO to next week when we have our next audit, was that, again, and I think I might be repeating myself, is that the employee base was the one who complained and bemoaned, and why the paperwork and why this and why that. And it didn't take long before they found out, hey, I made more money on this job because, and whatever the reason was. And to today, they won't miss a step in the dynamics of what they have to do in terms of paperwork. And a lot of the paperwork over these 2 decades, almost 3 decades, some of it's been automated, so they don't even have to do a lot of it. All they have to do is confirm that they did do it or whatever. But it really has become, it's become a thing where everybody understands that we get to make more money, one, and we don't lose money because of a screw up, because I'm trying to do better by my customer, and the customer understands the value of what you're doing. And it's for us, it has proven absolutely invaluable.
Well, and I think most companies, most people, when they start to understand it and start to see it in action, they realize that benefit, right? Certainly on paper, right? When you measure a company before they're certified, and you say, hey, how well are you hitting objectives? How much, how's your profitability? This, that, and the other, and you compare that to the aftermath of implementing these systems, and then measuring and going through iteration of continual improvement. It's very uncommon for a company to decline profitability after implementation if
Right.
they're using their system, right? There are, of course, there's companies out there who, they get certified and they feel like they reached the finish line, right? And that doesn't really gain you anything if you just say, oh, we did it once, we never have to think about it again. It's a system. It's supposed to be used and maintained. Those ones that maintain it, they see the reward.
So when you're out there beating the bushes looking for new clients to become ISO or AS or any of the other ones, do you get much in the way of pushback from either management or employee base?
Yeah, usually whether I'm knocking on doors or somebody's knocking on mine, it's usually there's a person or a small group of people at the leadership level that have an interest in rolling this out, and then we reach the greater team, right? The middle managers and so on, or even the people on top floor, and yeah, that's where we get some of the pushback. I've been doing it a long time. I'm used to it. I almost, I really kind of lean into that pushback because I love to hear the problems, right? I love to hear what they think the concerns are, and then I always ask them, where does it say we have to do it that way? Because the beauty of ISO 9001, all these other systems, is they put a general structure in place, but the details, get handed off to the organization to fill in, right? It says, something to the effect that the organization shall conduct a review prior to accepting or prior to committing to perform work. Well, you get to say what you're going to review, how you're going to review, who's going to be part of the review team, how often it's going to occur, what you're going to report, right? So the details become your process. And by explaining that to people and letting them be a part of, building that process so that it benefits them and helps them reach their goals. Most of the time we're able to change the hearts and minds.
So that was, it's funny, you just led me into my next question. How do you change their hearts and minds? Because right away, that they are anti, and of course you're pro. So how do you get them to buy into the concept that it's going to benefit them into the future?
So if I'll take ISO 9001 as an example, because again, it's kind of the foundation.
Right.
The first 3 sections of the standard have no requirements, right? It's there for some information, set the scope, set the framework of what the content's going to be. Section 4 is really usually dealt with at the senior management level, the people who are already engaging you, and that's to come up with who are your interested parties, what are your internal and external issues, and what's your strategic direction. So we want to know what they're aiming for and who they're trying to serve first, right? Section 5 is about management commitment. Now, this is again top management. We're setting the parameters before they even know what's to come. We want to get them and say, hey, are you guys going to be committed to it at this level? Are you going to have a quality policy? What's it going to say, right? Section 6 is planning and setting objectives. So now this is a good opportunity to set objectives by engaging the team who is going to impact those objectives, right? So this is where the middle managers and the employees come in. You say, hey, here's some goals for the company. You believe goals are good, right? Most people are going to say, yeah, we have goals, right? When you push them hard enough. Let them help set those goals based on what they think they can perform, right? And then when you move through section 7, 8, and 9, right? 7, you're going to get them the resources to be able to meet those goals. 8, you're going to put the controls on the internal and external operations. And 9, you're going to analyze, right? 9 is where you're going to change most of their minds, right? Because they've been resistant. They set goals. They're resistant through 7 and 8. 9, you take a measurement. You say, hey, now that you have these goals, you have these resources, and you put these controls in place. Look, you thought you were going to be reaching goals here. You're reaching goals here, right? Look at what your system did for you, right? And because they, the best way to do this is really to engage them, have them be part of it, have them take ownership of it. They hire me as a consultant when things are broken or when they're trying to tackle a big problem, but they don't want to keep me there all the time. My job is to work myself out of a job. Right? I want to be able to hand the keys over. And when they know that, hey, I can take the keys with this system that I helped build and implement, and I can, keep making my department better and better, then it's less of an argument about how many controls we should have, how many documents we should have, whether or not we should be doing this at all.
Tim brought up a point earlier on in this conversation about the day that we received our certificate in 1992, 3, something like that. The day we got the certificate, with all the pushback, with all of the problems, with all of the things that we had to implement and systems and so on. One of our salespeople, and I'll never forget his name, was Paul. Paul got a phone call from a client in Appleton, Wisconsin. And I can't remember the name, and I wouldn't say it anyway. In Appleton, Wisconsin, the customer said, I need to buy X, Y, and Z, but I'm having a problem. And the problem was he couldn't find anybody who had ISO registration. Well, we got it that day. He quoted the job. He got a $50,000 order, and I didn't have to convince any of the other salespeople after that. That was it. It was a home run.
Well, the new space industry is a booming industry, as I'm sure you guys have seen. It's forecasted to reach $4 trillion by 2030. Right? It's an amazing, astonishing number. If you want to do business in new space, you're going to have to be walking parallel with legacy space, at least for now. Legacy space requires that you're AS9100 certified. We talked before, 1.4% of companies or machine shops that are in existence today have AS9100, with $4 trillion of potential money sitting on the table, right? So yeah, okay, it might cost you 5 or 10 grand to implement your QMS, at least on paper, but that 5 or 10 grand is going to give you access to at least some piece of that $4 trillion that they're begging to get made, right? I mean, aerospace companies, legacy aerospace companies like Lockheed and Boeing, who have been establishments in the industry, can't find enough suppliers to make their parts. It's not that the machine shops don't exist, but certifications aren't implemented.
No doubt. Yeah, and that's exactly what Lou's company experienced. I think it's what your customers will experience as they give you a call from this show. Dereck, I want to thank you for joining us and kind of giving us the 30,000 foot view of a QMS system. And we encourage all of our listeners really to get serious about this. It's going to be less expensive than you think. The ROI is pretty short. It's going to tremendously benefit your company. I think you'll have a happier place to work, by the way, because people have confidence in the system. So, Dereck, thanks for joining us and sharing your knowledge on quality management system.
Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Lou, for having me on. It's been a blast. So
Thank you very much. And don't forget, AI, the end of the human race, the final invention.
Well, you and I will have to talk about one of my upcoming ventures if AI and stuff like that is of interest to you. So.
Do it. I'm open.
All righty.
All right.
Yeah, that'll be another podcast that we do with Dereck.
Absolutely.
So check us out at jacketmediaco.com, where you'll find this episode of Manufacturing Talk Radio and all of our other podcasts. And thank you for joining us here again. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you.